Okay, welcome and thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon for CertMatters.Live Online 2020. My name is Andrew Griggs. I am COO at Prodigy Learning and your compere for this webinar this afternoon. CertMatters has quickly grown to become a personal highlight of mine for the calendar year. It's a fantastic chance and a way for us to share, collaborate, meet, celebrate with all our customers, partners and students. Today's session 4 of our CertMatters series and switches our focus to creativity. We all live and talk about the value of digital skills, but hearing the success stories, seeing the importance of the students' place on their futures is incredible. It is with sadness and disappointment we've had to postpone our annual in-person celebration of digital skills and move to an online event. Everyone's health and safety is of utmost importance, and we all at Prodigy Learning hope that everyone remains safe and well. Despite the circumstances, we are delighted to continue our CertMatters.Live tradition. Moving online has given us the opportunity to expand the reach of our traditional London event and welcome educators today from across the world. Thank you to those that have stayed up late to join us from Australia, and good morning to all those that are joining early from the United States. We very much appreciate your commitment to join and take part. CertMatters.Live Online is running all the way through to the end of June. We have a session coming up that is not to be missed. Our United States-led session on the 24th of June will have North Carolina's Director of K-12 Computer Science and Technology, Dr. Mary Hemphill, and Michelle Lee from Alston Ridge Middle School share with us how they are embedding computer science in their curriculum for middle school students. And they're using Prodigy Learning's own coding and Minecraft credentials. That's next week on the 24th, so do sign up on CertMatters.com to register for that final session. If you want to view any of the previous sessions, also go to CertMatters.com where you'll be able to go and click on and view any of the previous content. CertMatters.Live, as well as an educator event, is very much about celebrating our student champions. Annually, we look to crown the top students in both the Microsoft Office products and also Adobe's Creative Cloud products. Next week sees our championships, where our finalists will be announced and will compete to be the UK overall winner. Typically, that champion will go on to compete in the global finals and represent the UK in a wider competition in the US. Sadly, this year that competition won't take place, but the winning student will go on next year to compete and represent the UK, where we'll be sending 2 students to compete in the global finals. Before we get started, I have a number of housekeeping points for everybody. Firstly, this session is recorded and can be found later today at CertMatters.com. We will be hosting live Q&A with our guests, so please pose questions in the Q&A window. Hopefully you can see that easily on the screen. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can in the time. Don't be disappointed if we don't ask your question, but we'll try and get through them. You'll see on the screen also at the moment Twitter handles for our guest speakers. Please continue the conversation on Twitter and don't forget to add hashtag CMLLive20 when tweeting. Enough of me, it's time to kick off this CertMatters online session. I'm sure you may have webinar fatigue, and I can assure you this isn't one to be missed though. This is going to be a great session. As I say, we changed the focus now towards creativity and design skills, and with 2 fantastic speakers in Tom McEldowie, who's Education Business Architect for Adobe, somebody equally I've known personally for a long time, with many different hats and many different roles, from a vice principal within education, within a school, actually then going on to do some work with Certiport on question design and design for ACA exams, amongst others. But now, as I say, an education business architect for Adobe, working on behalf of Adobe to support deployment of Adobe software amongst a number of large customers. Tom's going to share a key insight as an industry expert on the value of developing creativity skills, which are ranked number 3 demanded by employers in the Future Jobs Report by the World Economic Forum. There'll be time for Q&A, so do ask Tom questions, both about his role and what he's going to present on Adobe, but also maybe even on some of the questions and how they're posed by Certiport for the ACA exams. Following Tom, we have Taylor Sharp, a highly sought after freelance graphic designer, who's going to share with us his own ACA championship. I've had the pleasure of meeting Taylor on many a time and also spending last summer at the Adobe ACA Championships in New York with Taylor, where he presented on his own journey as an ACA winning student, both in the UK and the global finals, and represented the UK as the student ambassador over at that particular competition. So I'm delighted to have Taylor join us and talk about his experience as an ACA champion, and to reflect on what success it's had on him and his own personal circumstance, and how it's led to where he is now. So without further ado, enough of me. I'm delighted to hand over to Tom McEldowie from Adobe to kick off our session. So welcome, and thank you for joining us, Tom.
Thank you, Andrew, and welcome everyone. So my topic today is to talk about creativity and the top new skill you need in 2020, and some of the research that Adobe have done to support this and how we can support you and your students going forward. So Adobe strives to inspire and empower the next generation to be lifelong creators, and we're doing that with digital tools. So especially with the current situation where everything has moved digitally, we're now doing this completely digitally, whereas it would have been face-to-face. These students are living and going to exist in a world where digital is really important, and storytelling, getting your message across is going to be digital, and how you can do that using Adobe tools. So hopefully the sound will work on this video, but there's a short video about the life of students and what they're going into next. So let's play this. Okay, and one of the reflections of that is if you saw the Dragon space rocket taken off recently, the whole spaceship was controlled just by 2 touchscreens. And if you looked at the astronauts taking off over the last 30 years, that's moved from dials and input buttons to being completely touchscreen. And this world is changing, and we need to be able to create for this. So for almost 30 years, Adobe has been committed to education and supporting this next generation in driving forward. And one of the key things about this is about creativity, and it's now a critical in-demand skill for a changing world. And it's quite difficult in defining creativity, but in terms of how we can define that and what people are looking for. And with these new products, people have to learn to work differently. They have to work collaboratively, not face-to-face. And how we can drive this is key to this. But it's not just Adobe, because we say we're the creativity company that's saying this. We've done the research and looked at jobs and looked at information out there, and we've now got this data behind it. So as Andrew said in the introduction, the World Economic Forum seeing complex problem solving, critical thinking and creativity as the 3 most important skills for 2020 and beyond. Now this report was produced in for Adobe was produced in November, and I think that's even more critical now with how we're going and getting students prepared for a completely changing world. Look at how things go from A to B and follow a process very simply. But in terms of creativity, that's kind of the human superpower. So machines are much better when we're spending a lot of time on something to drive productivity by repeating things. But humans can really bring in this creativity, and it's kind of their battle against machine learning and focusing on that. Now, some of those tools with Photoshop and other tools have got machine learning and artificial intelligence built in, especially with the new updates where you can now select things much quicker using artificial intelligence. You've got content aware fill and things like that, where they're using machine learning to do those tasks that used to take quite a long time. And it allows the creative to really drive on their creative element and how it's different as well. And again, the fundamental skill, this was from the presentation at Max, that we've got LinkedIn Learning based on the research that creativity was the top soft skill looked for in terms of jobs. And we've also got the futures report there in terms of that piece. But these skills are not being nurtured in schools today. We did a project called Creative Problem Solving, and we focused on looking at how much students were given to be creative. And one of the challenges is from being an educator in secondary schools is that we overstructured the work for the students. So the young people didn't want to fail. They didn't want to get it wrong. They just want to get it right, get the best result and move on to the next stage in their career. So they would go through their GCSEs. We would give them writing frames. We would extend deadlines. They would then go on to college or do their sixth form and then go on to universities. And at each stage through that journey, the educators felt the pressure to get the best grades was in terms of structuring it and not allowing them to fail and come up with problem solving solutions. So and that's part of the process. And you learn by getting it wrong. You learn by being creative and coming up with 2 or 3 solutions to a problem rather than just focusing on one endpoint to meet a success criteria. So it's a barrier to teaching and problem solving is a lack of time as well, because one of these things in terms of the creative process, it takes time. You've got to get feedback, you've got to iterate, and we're quite often time poor. And that also focuses the attention on making sure you're just driving on outputs in the classroom. So what can we do? We looked at some more reports as well, rather than just saying that creative problem solving is key. We didn't want to stop there. We wanted to look at resumes and job applications as well to see what was being requested in the market and what students were putting on their CVs and their resumes. So we scanned millions of job postings and resumes. So 2 million analysed job postings, 2 million resumes. We conducted 18 in-depth interviews in the careers fields and 10 in-depth interviews there. But we were focusing specifically on the soft skills. So the 5 creative and soft skill sets of communication, creativity, collaboration, creative problem solving, and critical thinking. And we looked at the 18 diverse areas in terms of growing career fields where there's a need for these jobs. So where these jobs are growing over time, where there's a focus. And rather than just saying it's all about being a designer and that's linked to creativity, one of the things nowadays is we think about these different jobs. Whereas you used to have a career for life, you might have 4 or 5 different jobs. I mean, me, for an example, I trained as a PE teacher. And now I'm working for Adobe, talking about creativity and education. And we have this kind of non-linear path of learning. Students that are leaving universities now or colleges, they might have a side hustle. They might have to be innovative. And with the potential recession that will come as the back of the current situation, they need to be innovative and work out ways and maybe using some of these creative skills with digital technologies to find a gap in a market. So we've looked at this, and these key soft skills are important in all of these areas as well. So the soft skills in today's workforce, across the 18 career fields that we analysed, communication skills were the most highly sought after, then followed by creativity and collaboration. So communication, as we said, now we're communicating digitally today. We're communicating by email. We're having Teams meetings, Slack meetings, Zoom meetings. We're using backgrounds to make it more professional. So we're thinking about how we communicate all the time. That could be written communication, that could be video, which is a big driver as well at the moment, as well as graphical communication. And so these jobs had the percentage requiring 71% required communication, 50% said we want creativity. So they were quite key measures. And Bloomberg's research has highlighted the same desired skill sets across all industries. So again, rather than saying that creativity is just for media and art and design, it's across the whole range, communication skills and collaborative working as well. So we're now starting to get to a place where you don't just complete a project from start to end, you work on a project with multiple people, getting feedback through that process to come out with an end product, and how we can support that. And then representing these soft skills in terms of the resumes didn't stack up. So when we looked at the resumes, there was a big gap in these soft skills in students actually identifying these skills on their resume and saying, look, I'm really creative, and some examples of it, or I'm good at communication or collaboration and problem solving. So there was a mismatch between the request of the job posting and the resumes that were being put forward to those jobs. So in there, 3 and 4 resumes didn't mention creativity or communication, which is critical. And linking that back to things like the ACA about the digital skills in terms of using the digital tools, you're doing it, you're communicating with these tools, and then the test can measure your ability and effectiveness of using the tool. It can't measure your initial creativity, but if you're much quicker and more efficient at using the tool, then you can be more creative. And that's something to think about in terms of certification and how we measure that. So what skills gaps are there to close? And they're sizable. And we need them to really highlight on their resumes their skills, these soft skills, and demonstrate these skills in an interview process. We now live in a completely digital world where the first point of applying for a job is looking on a portal, finding that. You might be asked to put your LinkedIn profile on there or a portfolio of work. how can you evidence this, and showing that digital portfolio where you've used it to communicate. And communication could be in terms of launching a new product, selling a business idea. It doesn't have to actually just be around design. How you've collaborated, if you've worked on a project together, if you've worked on a video, which part you played in that. That's also really important, and that's what people are looking for. What does your digital footprint tell us about you? It's something that people need to focus on. And again, with the certification, it's kind of that meeting that gold standard of being able to use those tools effectively. We've had that line where I'm good at Photoshop. Okay, what does that mean? If you've got an ACA certificate to say that you've reached the standard in Photoshop, we know that you've met that standard, and that's really useful to have on a CV. The same thing goes for the other certifications as well that are available. Okay, so the key things about the study implications and the call to actions. Seekers need to showcase their skills throughout the hiring process and work on continual skill development. One of the things that we've got nowadays is YouTube in terms of videos, that if you want to learn how to do something, you go online and you can find out. And we need to evidence that in terms of, I couldn't do something, and rather than say, no, that's too difficult, I could go out and look for that and build that resume. We have micro certification in terms of some of these videos and online platforms that are available in terms of completing courses, and just showing that you're lifelong learning in those places there as well, and being able to evidence that you've taken on that challenge and you've shown how you've come through that too. The tools need to be available to more students to foster their creative skills, access to tools. So one of the things with the Adobe toolset now is that you can have named user licensing, which enables you to install it on your own device. And one of the big things from Adobe is we're now focusing on any surface. So you could start working on Photoshop on an iPad and then pick that up on a desktop machine, Mac or PC. We're working on Illustrator on the iPad. We've got video editing where you can record it on your phone. You could edit the whole thing on your phone with professional titles, or then jump onto your desktop, open up that same project without having to import files, and then edit that, or even take it into Premiere Pro. So those tools are now more available and on any device and anywhere too. And also hiring managers need to adapt to the way to seek and evaluate these candidates. And one of the things that the candidates can do is make sure that when they put their CV in or their resume, that they have a link to a portfolio with more evidence of how they've used and shown these skills and where they've worked on a project together in team collaboration. So that's a key change that we need to skill up these hiring managers for that piece. And then with our tools, we would have had Adobe Max in Europe this week, but we've just launched major new feature updates, which are available straight away. And some of the key things around this are included in this blog post. So I'm just going to pull out a few examples of these updates. The first thing that we've done is we've really wanted community and inspiration, because we're all working digitally now and people are sharing these documents. So we've pulled this together in a gallery form. The other thing down there is Adobe Live, where we're talking about students developing their own skills and young people or anyone developing their own skills. We're now putting out weekly videos with experts showing how to do things using the new features and functions of our tools. And so people can constantly look to learn and develop those skills. The other thing is with launches of things like Fresco, which is our new painting and drawing app, we're now enabling people to live stream from within that app. So where they're doing their design and showing which tools and which features they're using, they can be live streaming that out and enabling people to share their knowledge and share that experience. So that live streaming function and giving the ability to learn from each other is in there. And then the final big change of our tools is we're really focusing on collaboration. So with tools like Photoshop, we've now got cloud documents. By having the cloud documents enable people to work collaboratively on things going forward, we have an update to InDesign, which now enables you to send out your InDesign publication for feedback. And those feedback comments come directly into InDesign. So you don't have to send out a document, wait for them to comment on that, wait for it to be emailed back to you. You can work on it live there. The other thing is we have tools like Adobe XD, so our experience design tool for designing and mocking up mobile apps. We can already support multiple live co-editing in that tool. And so you can have multiple people working on different screens or the same screens at the same time and really driving that collaboration through the digital platform. And one of the last things around collaboration is we're really focusing on CC libraries, which is a resource of digital assets that can be shared between multiple Adobe apps as well as tools like PowerPoint and Microsoft Word, and you can collaborate on building a library of assets around a logo, a brand, a product, and those can be available to anyone within your organization or that you shared with, or people outside of a design agency, to have those files in the right format just to drop straight into a PowerPoint presentation or a Microsoft Word presentation. And the advantage of Creative Cloud is this constant development of this as well, is that these are being updated all the time. And with that, I hand over to Andrew for some Q&A.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Tom. I think you'll agree that was a fantastic presentation. And there wasn't much that Tom didn't cover there around how Adobe is supporting creativity and digital skills. We're going to hold off, Tom, just on questions for the moment. We'll ask those at the end. There's a couple that have come in for Taylor as well as yourself, but we'll hold off and ask those collectively at the end, if that's okay. So what I'd like to do now is move on and introduce that next up on the agenda. If you wouldn't mind moving the slides, please, Tom. I'm delighted to hand over to Taylor Sharp, as I mentioned at the start, somebody that I've personally had the pleasure of meeting and being with on a few occasions at very relevant events, somebody that we had the pleasure of crowning our UK ACA student champion way back in 2018, I believe. Taylor, you might correct me on that. And somebody who travelled across the US to compete on behalf of the UK and has since gone back to further present on his own journey through the UK Student Championships and then on the US to a wider global setting in the worldwide finals. So look, Taylor, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. I've been asked to present on what should be a fairly easy topic, and that is myself. More specifically, my job and how I'm in a position that I aspired to be in from a fairly young age, and that is being a full-time freelancer graphic designer, illustrator, and photographer. My name's Taylor Sharp. I'm from the United Kingdom and I'm 23 years old. I was born in London but now based in Birmingham. The current work that I do is fairly broad. I work with two companies directly, loaning out my time to them. One is Blind Mice Design, who do marketing and exhibition design. The other is Retail Experience Design, who design retail environments mainly for medical clients, and I'm the branding lead for them. I also have a variety of smaller client-based work. It all started here. Next slide, please. Clearly thinking inside the box, not outside, but it was actually when I was a bit older than this, about 13 years old, I received a laptop for Christmas. And as an avid artist and designer, the first thing to get was Illustrator. So that's what I did. One Christmas, my auntie saw I was doodling. I was often creating things like football kits and football badges. So I didn't realise that at quite a young age, I was actually like taking those first steps to becoming a designer. And she saw this and she said, "Oh, that's actually what my designers use." And this is when I was introduced to the company Smack. In fact, she was the director of this company. Now, Smack is a digital design agency based out of Covent Garden, and they work for brands such as Ted Baker, Body Shop, and Aston Martin. And as a young kid, I jumped at the opportunity to go and work with her and explore what a real studio is actually like. So I interned here for a couple of weeks throughout the summer at sort of the ages 14, 15, 16, creating mood boards, giving ideas to designers, and actually getting some briefs and creating some interesting like little projects. This is when I kind of knew that I wanted to be a designer. I focused all of my schooling towards my new goal. I chose to study art, product design, and English language. All of these sort of benefiting my university interview. So I chose Coventry University. For me, it was the best university course. It was very broad because I wasn't quite sure what design. I'm still dabbling in all sorts of design. My interview, I thought this would be quite easy. I'd focused on schooling. I had a large body of work, of good work actually, and the tutor's response was fairly flat. It was sort of, what else is there? And my heart sank. I thought, no, I'm flunking this. It's not going well. And I remembered I carried around a book of designs. was a little black book full of sort of mood boards, competition entries I'd put online, and I'd sort of crudely stick them in there. And I thought, compared to something that I would present to a interviewer, it wasn't going to be enough. But the response was sort of, wow, this is incredible. And this is actually what got me an unconditional offer at university, sort of small, specific, localized part of work that I sought out myself. So I got into Coventry University, and they have a module called Advantage. So the Advantage course is you get to choose sort of from a wide range of modules. You can choose a language, you can choose mathematics, physics, but naturally I wanted to choose something to enhance my resume, and I chose Adobe Illustrator. So the first year is fairly similar to the competition today. As in, with Prodigy Learning, you're set a brief, you complete it and you present. And the second year is the exam. So I completed the first year. I decided, yep, I really enjoy this. I want to do the next year as well to get certified. And I did. My tutor over these 2 years was Nigel Hopkins. He's a brilliant illustrator. There's some of his work on screen now. He said, Taylor, I've seen your work. I know you're proficient in the software. You've got a good work ethic. I want to offer you a part-time job. So this was sort of my first realization that I could make it in the design world. So I took this part-time job. It was over summer, completing quite a few briefs. This is for museums. And this was sort of a fantastic insight into the real world, as it were. I thought to myself, if this is what one qualification can get me, like so far, meeting new people, proving myself as being proficient in some software, imagine what two could do. So I decided to do Photoshop and InDesign as well. Two more crucial softwares in the world of design. Photoshop I did in my third year with Kate Rosin, a brilliant photographer. And in the third year, Joy Monkhouse asked me to take part in the InDesign module, just to take the test, not do the course, because she felt I had the ability to complete that. And it was actually the InDesign that got me to the national championships. Next slide, please. So this is the UK championships, and that in turn led to the World Championships 2 years ago in Florida, which was an incredible experience, meeting some very like-minded people, but also a lot of business-minded people. After this, uni was over. I upped my hours at Blind Mice Design to keep me going. And it was when I had to decide on what I should do next. Do I go into the job market and find out what that's like? Or do I go completely freelance, which I didn't think was possible straight out of uni? Because I had worked in a shared studio with Blind Mice Design, Retail Experience Design, and a few other companies, I'd made quite a few good connections. And with Blind Mice Design and Retail Experience Design, I had a strong foundation to build my freelance sort of business. So I had two main companies supporting me while I could find other work, which is where I am today. But just before this, I sort of wanted to dip my toe in the water and see what the job market was like, just to see what sort of chance I have, what sort of jobs are out there for me. Here are some examples of work I may have shown. So there's some illustration work and photography work. And I actually applied for roles that were probably out of my experience range, sort of more middleweight designer positions, something with 3 to 4 years experience. And normally someone straight out of university wouldn't even be considered. But I got some of these jobs, I was offered them, some of them not, but I felt a lot more confident going into these interviews, having certifications. I like to bring this back to my university interview, and I had this large body of work that was really good, but the 10% of something special was that small black book full of many designs that I curated myself. And this was exactly the same with the real world job interviews. I had my uni work, my portfolio, my body of work, but what set me aside from everyone else was my certifications. That 10% of something special was there, and they looked past my lack of experience and focused on what I was capable of in the future and how I could help shape their company. If you can take anything away from my experience, it would be, don't take anything for granted, but also like seize every opportunity. I jumped at the chance to go to the summer internships with my auntie. I jumped at the chance to go to Blind Design over the summer as well. And I also wanted to get as many qualifications at university as possible, even though technically one of them wasn't accessible for me. And that is everything from me. If you have any questions.
Taylor, that's absolutely amazing. Thank you. Very much appreciate your time this afternoon. I particularly love the point there about the 10% of something special, the 10% extra. And that's what, you mentioned certifications giving you. I'd probably argue that, if I'm honest with you, and say that with yourself, there's probably more than 10%. It takes a little bit more than 10% to become the UK champion and to go on and compete in the global finals. So you can probably argue that there's probably 20-30% extra that you offer any business or industry who's looking to bring you in to help and support them. So look, I'd probably praise yourself a little bit higher than that if I were you. It's look, like I said, it's been obviously a pleasure to have met you and to have seen you compete and grow through the championships and now through business. Taylor's also done a small amount of work for us at various times as well, which has obviously helped us as a business. Look, if I need to plug and sell yourself, Taylor, then I would certainly recommend to anybody who is watching and listening to go and get in contact with Taylor for any work that you need doing. A fantastic designer, somebody very, very talented. I'll loop back to Q&A and I'll bring Tom back in if that's okay, Tom, at this point. There's a couple of questions just to run through and ask you both around the ACA certifications and your own experiences on those. There's a couple here that have come in, Taylor, that are probably more best suited for yourself, and then I've got some for Tom. So for you, Taylor, one that's here, what advice would you give to students who want to pursue a career in design?
I would say it was sort of focus on that niche sort of market. I probably went into it quite broad. As a freelance designer, you kind of want to do everything under the sun to make as much money as possible and fill up all that time. But if you have to do that, focus on something specific. Right now I'm focusing on photography, so I'm putting sort of all my energy into that, and it takes off really quickly. So as soon as I've started about a year ago doing my photography work, and in that time I've now got 4 or 5 different clients. So I think focusing your energy into one specific area rather than being so broad as I was at the beginning, I think that's the best advice from me.
And Tom, I might actually just ask you the same question from an industry's perspective, but also thinking of your other hats as an educator in the past. What advice would you give, or have you typically given to students who are looking to pursue a career in design?
So is a passion for it. I think that's the key thing, that you need to have a desire and a real interest in it. I agree with Taylor that trying to be a master of everything means that you don't actually specialize. So if there's something that you're really passionate about and you're really able and capable to, then drive that. And I think that other piece as well that Taylor said with the Black Book, what is it that you can show that you actually really are involved in this, rather than just the final output? What is the process, the flow that you went through to show that creativity, I think is key in terms of design. So passion and focus, I think, would be the 2 key things.
And what value in that equation do you think certification has?
So certification is, to me, it shows that kind of that stamp of approval that you've reached a standard in use of the tools. So it doesn't measure creativity, but it measures that you're efficient and you're proficient in using those tools. And that's a key thing. I mean, part of the certification as well is about really understanding the audience and purpose, which is key, which is something the ACA does. So it makes you think back, right, why am I doing this? What's the purpose of it? Who do I need to think about the target audience? And that certification gives you that seal of approval that you can use as a micro-credential or a badge that can be shown globally and understood globally as well.
And again, thinking of your other hats, Tom, how did some of that translate when you were looking at question writing the ACA exams. How, I'll let you go on, I'll let you jump in.
Okay, so I mean, the question writing was really, are we asking a question about, we need to be quite specific in what we're trying to measure. So a question is about measuring if someone can do something or understand something, and that has to be quite a focused question. And sometimes it might feel that the questions are worded in such a way as to try and trick people. That's not the case, but there was quite a lot of refinement in that we are looking at specific objectives in the domain objectives that we're measuring against. The question can't be so broad that it covers all areas. It must be focused. And some of the things that we were thinking about when writing those and the discussions and the debates, and there were many of them, is, do we need that many words in there? Does that actually detract from the question? Does it give it the focus? And so there was a whole process involved in how you write a question, especially if it's a task-based question, creating something. You can't really give the task away by the question, but you need an output that can be measured. And there's lots of kind of quite heavily psychological thoughts that go into a question writing. So it was interesting, and that's how we did it.
Thanks, Tom. Taylor, another question for you that we've got here. A question for myself, actually. You obviously took your ACA certifications, but you went on to pursue more. Can you give the listeners or any students, anybody who is viewing the webinar here, any tips around how you approach the actual learning and the courses themselves?
I had fantastic tutors first off, and what they did for us is they produced sort of like a little guideline booklet. So if you don't have that, I think the best thing to do is to create that sort of binder folder full of all of the key facts you need for those. And I would sit there and I would study it. But I think one of the main things to realize is that you need to have a lot of experience and time on the software itself. So the more experience and time you can spend going through the menu systems, that would be the best way to do it for me.
Perfect stuff. Well, look, I'm conscious of both your time and everyone's time this afternoon. So look, thank you, Taylor. Very much appreciate you spending the afternoon with us and talking about your experience. I think everyone will find that hugely valuable. And Tom, very much appreciate and value the partnership with Adobe, and to have you on to be able to talk through, the emphasis that Adobe are placing on digital skills has been fantastic. So look, really, really appreciate you both taking part this afternoon. Thanks ever so much. Before we finish up and before everybody disappears, just a quick recap of some of our housekeeping points. The recording of this session is going to be made available at the end on CertMatters.com. Our next session is one, as I mentioned, that's certainly not to be missed, where we have North Carolina's Director of K-12 Computer Science and Technology, Dr. Mary Hemphill, and Michelle Lee from Alston Ridge Middle School, sharing with us how they are embedding computer science in their curriculum for middle school students, using Prodigy Learning's own coding and Minecraft credentials. You can also go back and view previous sessions with some fantastic sessions where we had Robert Bradley from the UTC Reading taking us through how they embed what they consider and call professional qualifications, or the same micro credentials, credentials such as the ACA program, into their own learning pathways for their students and learners. We also have the hugely successful session with Anthony Sorcito talking about cloud skills and the future of cloud computing with Microsoft. So please feel free to go and view those along with this session today. Don't forget, you can continue the conversation online and using Twitter by following our Twitter handle @CertMatters, or any of the Twitter handles that we shared earlier on. Please use hashtag CMLLive20 when tweeting. And finally, if you have any questions on anything you've seen today, if you'd like to ask more questions to our panel, if you would like to find out more about anything you've heard or anything you've seen, and ultimately if you would like to learn more about how to introduce Adobe certification, maybe locally in your own curriculum, then feel free to contact us. I'll pause and just leave our details on the screen at the moment for everybody to jot those down. But look, please do get in touch, and we'll be delighted to pass questions on or to answer any questions directly for ourselves. Okay, well, look, a huge thank you once again to our guest speakers, Tom McAdowie and Taylor Sharp. Thank you to the Prodigy Learning team sat in the background there behind the scenes, helping out, coordinating this particular session, managing the questions. And thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon. We very much appreciate the time that you've committed to taking part in this webinar, and very much appreciate your and value your time as a key partner to ourselves. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it beneficial. And thanks everybody. Look, enjoy the rest of your days, evenings, wherever you may be. Do continue to stay safe and well. Thank you all. Speak to you soon. Thanks.